Hello Leute, welcome back to my channel, and today's video is going to be starting about a relationship that I had about 5 years ago. It ended about 5 years ago. I have stayed silent very long about this particular topic because it happened to me. It could happen to any of you guys. You guys may be going through something like this. I had a relationship from hell that lasted a very long time, about 3 years. When I was younger. I'm 22 now. My birthday was just last week. So I figured that I would help anyone out who's struggling with this, as well as anyone who may be going through something like this, even though I just said that. So this is going to be a little bit difficult for me to talk about, considering the memories of this are pretty fuzzy at this point in time. I've been wanting to make this video, and I've been hesitating for so long because of I didn't know how I was going to write this or how I was going to plan this out, but I thought I might as well give it a go right now and explain everything from beginning to end as to what happened. Now, every story has two sides when it comes to relationships, right? But this is my side. It may not be right, it may not be wrong. However, to me, this is the right way that things happened. Granted, my ex has not talked about this, I don't think ever in his lifetime. But this was something that happened on YouTube, so I figured I would mention this because it happened 5 years ago, as well as any of you guys could be in a toxic relationship, and I can give you guys as well as warning signs for toxic relationships, because I've been in more than just one toxic relationship. So with that being said, we're going to jump right in because I don't want to beat around the bush right now. So to start off, we met on YouTube. I had a channel previously that I'm not going to name. Honestly, I don't even remember the name of it at this point. It was so long, it was that long ago. And I've kind of just been avoiding it because of all of that. But really, it doesn't really bother me anymore. The only reason why I'm saying that now is because I'm over this completely, even though you guys may be like, oh my god, you're probably not over this, Effie. However, I am. And we'll start from the beginning. So this guy was an advice giver on YouTube. I'm not going to say his name because I don't really want to really expose him per se at this point in time. When I was, of course, many years ago, I thought that. Like 4 or 5 years ago, I thought, okay, well, I'm going to expose this motherfucker. We're going to call Ryan. So I figured I would, I had some boy trouble, obviously, as an 8th grader. Keep in mind, this was a while ago. This was about 2012-ish. So this was the start of it all. So I called him a friend of mine for so long. Nobody really knew about him, knew about Ryan and I, until it kind of got a little bit more serious. That's all I'm going to say. To the fact that he was an advice giver on YouTube, that was basically his excuse for every single thing that I'm going to be talking about later in this video. But I developed feelings for him, I think, the summer of that year. I don't think we started dating until, well, I don't really know dating. I mean, dating is the right term. However, it was a bit interesting because I was underage. He was 5 years older than me. So a decent sized age difference when you're underage. However, I think I was about 15. Yeah, I would have been about 15 at the time. He would have been at least 19 or 20. I can't really remember the age difference between that at that time. Because our birthdays were fairly close together. Anyway. So I was underage. He wasn't. He was in college in Canada. He was from Canada. We're just going to say that right now. Granted, I didn't notice a lot of things, as many people in toxic relationships or in relationships that they think are going really great, they may not notice any red flags. Granted, I didn't notice that for quite some time, and that was pretty much until the first red flag that I kind of noticed with him. Granted, yes, he was a college student. Yes, he was doing homework and stuff. He was, I don't know what major he was in. I really don't even remember, to be completely honest with you. But he was at a major college in Canada. So Ryan would always, we would like barely talk. And the thing about relationships, in my opinion, through experience with my former relationships, is to always communicate. Communication is key, even if you're having sex, whatever you want to do in a relationship. I think communication is key. Back then, I knew it was key, but I didn't know how to register it until later on in the relationship. So communication was really bad. It was barely there. It was always that way throughout the whole relationship. Granted, it was kind of like I never really knew what he was doing outside of this relationship, because he wouldn't communicate. He would post it on social media, however, which was a little bit, we'll get into that a little bit later, but he posted so many things on social media, and it's like he had a bit of a social life. Granted, I always had to worry about him. I was like, well, what is Ryan doing now with this girl? What is Ryan doing now with this girl? I didn't realize it early on that I was being cheated on, and I didn't really realize it until the very end of the relationship, until like a few months before we broke up. Anyway, before I dumped him. So, he was in college throughout the whole entire relationship, and probably still is to this day. I don't really know what exactly he was going to school for. I don't really remember, because it was so long ago. So, he posted everything on the internet, which honestly, this guy was kind of a bit of a twat, if you ask me. My friends even told me that too. I told a few friends about this, because they didn't really know the whole story behind it, but this is my story. So, he was a bit of a twat. Posted everything online, which, you're in a relationship with a girl that's underage, as well as, he didn't really post anything about me. It was like I didn't exist to him, but yet we were Facebook friends, and like the whole thing. We were in a relationship, at least in my opinion. I still think that we were in a relationship, even though I'm looking back on this 5 years later. And I know that online relationships there's a big stigma, like, oh, you're not really in a relationship with someone when it's long distance and you haven't met them. I disagree. Obviously, I'm gonna get more into that in maybe another video. So, there was something bad that happened. A few bad things happened while I was in this relationship in my own personal life that I'm not gonna get into. But we'll say that he ended up turning into said person in a way. Towards the end of the relationship. And the thing is, I didn't notice, there were so many red flags in this relationship that I didn't notice until even just writing the script out. He was really, like, during the last 6 months or so of our relationship, he would always put me in these really creepy, uncomfortable situations when we were Skyping. For example, he would do these... Okay, so he was into, let's say, we're going to say that he was into hentai porn, and Ryan was definitely into hentai porn. I, however, am not into that. That's not a fetish that I've ever had in my lifetime. But he was really into that shit. And I understand a lot of people, fetishes are very individual. They're very different. Like, I mean, there's many different kinds of fetishes. They're very interesting for me to learn about. However, at the time, I found this really gross. He almost forced me on Facebook, granted for the fact that I still had a bit of balls at the time, and I told him, hell no, Ryan, I'm not going to post that on Facebook, because my family is going to see this, and they are going to fucking kill you if I tell them who posted it. It actually ended up pretty bad in terms of, like, Facebook stuff. He was Facebook friends with my older... I don't think he was Facebook friends with my older brother, but my older sister, who recently we were talking about this recently. And she didn't... I will say she didn't really like him. And I was, like, obviously the girlfriend, so of course I was, like, really supportive and, like, oh my god, like, he's awesome, like, he's so cool, sort of thing, and I was madly in love with him, like anyone that knew me at the time of that relationship will tell you. But this isn't really that hard for me to talk about. However, I'm trying to put this as blunt as possible, but there were just so many red flags. There was one that definitely I didn't realize was kind of a manipulative move until I did more research on this specific thing about manipulative people. The thing about manipulative people is that they try and, get you to do things that you really don't want to do. So one thing that he would always say, granted, I understand the stress of school, everything like that. I was in school at the time of this whole thing. I'm not anymore. But he would always say that he was depressed, and he kind of wanted me to always help him. And you're not responsible for anyone's emotions when it comes to these relationships. When it comes to, like, oh, always being depressed. And then he would always complain about other girls that were making him this way. Not just me. He would always never blame me. He said it was this friend of mine, she She and I, like, known each other for a bit, and granted, I didn't think anything of it at the time until it kind of went into a cycle for forever, and he would always ask for me for advice, and I was like, dude, you're the advice giver on YouTube that apparently has, like, so many subscribers. I think it was, like, 19,000 at the time. He was very manipulative with that. He would always say, because I have been going to a therapist for quite some time, especially during the time of this whole thing. That was when I kind of got into being in therapy. So with that, he would always, if any of you guys have ever seen Skins, there's an episode in season 4 towards the end of the season with Effie when she is in a mental hospital. And there's a psychiatrist of hers that is trying to basically manipulate her as well as try and kill off anyone who comes in her way. This kind of reminded me of it, and I even told him that, and I was like, this is just like the episode of Skins where Effie gets manipulated and Freddie spoiler alert, but Freddie ends up dying in that episode. And I told him that, and he was like, I just want to be with you, and I don't condone or, like, want people to try and close me off to just that one person. That's a very controlling thing that I've never been a fan of. I need to be around people. I'm a very extroverted person. And when he did that, that was a really big red flag. I was like, oh my God, this was towards the end of our relationship. I don't really know, like, where at, but it was definitely towards the end of our relationship. Like I said before, the communication was really bad. We wouldn't Skype as often, because he would always complain that he had a lot of homework. Granted, I understand that. I understand college can give you a bunch of workload. My mom is a college professor. I've been in college, I know. And so when he was in college, he would always complain that, yeah, I've got a lot of homework, or like, oh, family trouble, whatever. Yes, I understand family trouble too, because I was going through a lot of that at the time of this too. Due to the fact that I was talking to someone due to the fact that I was dating him. There were many things that went on. I would get bullied at school for this. People would find out. Of course, I was really dumb and trusted people when I really shouldn't have. And I also trusted Ryan when I really shouldn't have. And I really do think that you don't really owe anybody anything. And even if it is a relationship that you're in, you don't need to tell people. Like, I'm very private with these things. I don't tell anybody. Like, you'd have to get it out of me. You'd have to be really, really close with me. I don't even tell my mom about any of this shit anymore. Because I don't trust people, the thing is. And the thing is, at the time, I trusted a lot of people. I would give people the benefit of the doubt and, try and trust them. However, it got around to my whole school. And I believe that he found out. I don't really remember. He might have. But I was in school, and of course, a lot of people would be like, oh, how's Ryan? How's Ryan? Like, play videos of him play videos of videos that he's produced. That was really annoying to me. I felt so trapped in this whole situation. My therapist that I had at the time, not really that, I probably would have been seeing her for about a year at this point. And I had so many things going on with this guy, and he caused me more pain than I think I've ever had in any relationship after this and before this. He was my third relationship, as well as my first, like, love, This was really difficult for me I didn't want to talk about this a lot of the time. So, what was I trying to say? So, I trusted him so much. He and I had a plan to elope and get married in Canada when I graduated high school. Granted, that didn't happen, obviously. I'm still here, still in America, for the time being. And I thought that maybe, I actually was a little bit more brainwashed than I had thought I was ever in my life because of him trying to convince me to move to Canada. I've always known that Canada has shit healthcare. Anyone that lives in Canada would be able to tell me that, and I know people that are from there. So you can't get around the fact, but since I've got so many medical issues, I have to go to a country that has great healthcare. Besides, America doesn't have that. It's okay on healthcare, but it's not universal. But I know that Canada's healthcare is really shitty, but he would brainwash me into thinking that it wasn't. Granted, that's all he's ever known. I don't think he's ever I didn't think that Ryan had lived anywhere else besides Canada his whole life, as far as I knew. And I don't really know at this point either. And so we almost ended up engaged. I almost ended up married. I wasn't really engaged at 17, but I almost ended up engaged. A lot of people warned me about this, as many people who have been in toxic relationships will warn them or maybe tell them to try and get out of it. A lot of my friends would be like, Sarah, don't fucking do it. He's a fucking creep. Like, I've seen, like, some things that, like, oh my god, he's trying to manipulate you. He's trying to scare you. He would always joke about marriage, and for some reason that still annoys me to this day. Like, if you joke about marriage, this isn't like joking about dating, you know? Like, when some people will joke about that, like when you're friends with someone, really good friends with someone, you know? But this went on for a bit. He would always do this, and it was like, I think he was honestly, even at the time, I thought he was trying to scare me off. Because he, for some reason, wanted to marry me. He said, oh, well, that's fine. You need time to plan our wedding anyways. And it was like, he said he was kidding. And you don't joke about that shit, right? Like, anyone in the comment section can tell me you don't joke about marriage in any sense. Like, I wouldn't joke about that even to my closest male friends or any female friends that I have. I wouldn't joke about that because that's a serious topic, as well as it's a lot of commitment. However, this guy would always do this, and my older brother specifically, very protective of me at the time of this whole thing, and so was my older sister. She actually acted more like a mom than my own mom did. My mom was also a little bit protective of me at this time too, considering I've never really had a dad. So my mom takes on both roles. At the time of this, my older brother knew about him. I was like raving about him. Of course, he was in a long distance relationship before, which I didn't realize that. My older brother is gay. I don't know if I should really post this on the internet, but I'm sure he probably wouldn't care. My older brother, my half brother, is gay, and he was married. I believe he was married at the time of this. But he told me a lot about long distance relationships. But he's not very optimistic about it, and he said, I don't think it's a good idea for you, Sarah, to be with this guy and stuff. And I can't even remember what all he said, but I know it was somewhere along the lines of that. So fast forward to the last Skype session that we had together. It was a roller coaster for me. I was very vulnerable at this point in my life due to what happened previously and the fact that he was acting the same way that I didn't want him to act. I thought, oh, well, maybe he's drunk. And he definitely was drunk, because he told me during the whole thing, this was a bit fucked up, but however, I'm going to add this in. He was like, would you take advantage of me, Sarah, if I was drunk? And I was like, you're drunk right now. Like, I can tell. I've grown up around it, okay? So, I mean, I know how to detect it. I've known from very early on how to do that. And it's not really that difficult. He said, would you take advantage of me if I was drunk? And I was like, hell no, I would get your ass out of there. I would get your ass on the street and you would just sleep on the floor. And he, of course, thought it was funny or something. He was scaring the living shit out of me at this point. And it was really difficult for me. And the next day I had a therapy appointment. I said, I'm going to tell my therapist about this. And he said, don't. Oh, a million times. And I felt bad at the time that I was going to be considering dumping him after my therapy appointment, after all of this happened to be. And so I was at my therapy appointment in a therapy session. I was telling my therapist exactly what happened the night before. And so she was like, well, you know, work this through your mind. That's what my therapist has always done. I'm probably not really supposed to talk much about this, but I can definitely vouch for it for myself. And she always was like, well, you know, you need to think through this, Sarah. You need to think through it and think what is the best option for you. And I was like going through ideas and going through things that went on in the relationship at the night of this incident of when he was drunk. And that was pretty much the last straw for me, because he also crossed a line. I told him to stop. I also told him to not talk about like alcohol problems and stuff like that. At the time, that was not a topic you talked about. And then to find out that he was cheating on me with so many different women, that I actually just was in denial before that. And I knew he was cheating, it's just that I didn't want to come to terms with it. So I told myself, okay, I'm going to get online, I'm going to dump him. And it may be hard right now, but I was really upset after I dumped him. I walked up from my room and my mom noticed I was bawling my eyes out. I mean, I was crying for days about this whole thing. And it took me so long to get over this. It was my first love, my first like serious relationship. A lot of people can get over relationships rather quickly. I'm kind of getting to that point now in life. But at the time, that was my first love. Anyone who's ever been through relationships, been through love, been in love in any way will know that it's not easy to get over someone who's your first love. And looking back on it, I really was just, I felt so bad that I was like, oh God, I dumped him. He was drunk. He doesn't remember. But I wrote him a long message about why I was dumping him. Granted, I'm not exactly against that now. At the time, I was like, okay, I'm gonna dump your ass. And I dumped him. And right after that, he was like, okay, bye. And then he went through. Granted, my friend, who I talked about this earlier, not today, but like the other day. We're just gonna say the other day. She was like, you should really put this on the internet. So I'm like, okay. And so what happened was that he was like going through like, okay, I'm watering my plants right now. Oh my God, I act like a total psychopath. But no, he was going through like a certain thing, and then he said delete and block, don't ever message me again. I think I deleted the message after a while. And then I haven't talked to him since. I did try and tell him to fuck off because he was still like kind of stalking me. That went a little bit over my head as well. I felt so bad about the relationship for so long, and I realized none of this was my fault. I was a good person during this whole relationship. I was the only person that showed him sympathy or empathy or anything along those lines. I tried to help him, but people have a tendency to be a little unpredictable. However, this relationship, looking back on it about 5 years later, I'm over him, obviously. It did take quite some time. For any of you guys who have been in manipulative relationships as well as a relationship from hell like myself, I've been in many other relationships before. I could even keep this as a series, going for my relationship of blank. And because I've been in enough relationships to even like know. I could even talk about like my first time, because I kind of do want to talk about that considering what it was. However, that was the end of this video, and I hope you guys enjoyed this. Be sure to like and subscribe to my channel, as I will be making more videos, hopefully. I can't always guarantee that, but I will be making more videos. A lot of them are in the making right now, and I will see you guys later. Bis später.